Marlon Brando's Lost Years. Secrets hidden in Tahiti. In the late 1960s, Hollywood's biggest star, Marlon Brando, vanished one day. Why did the world's most famous actor abandon everything at the peak of his career to settle on a deserted island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? What really happened during those mysterious years he spent in Tetiaroa? Today we'll explore Brando's Tahitian years that nobody knows about, the secrets he kept, and the dark truths behind this decision. Because this story is not just about an actor's escape, it's also one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries. But before we begin, if you love the dark corners of cinema history, Hollywood's hidden stories, and the unknown sides of unforgettable names, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because I regularly share this type of content with you, and believe me, Brando's story is just the beginning. Marlon Brando is 36 years old, and undeniably the greatest actor in the world. He has rewritten cinema history with A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, and The Wild One. But behind the scenes, a collapse is happening that nobody sees. Court battles with his first wife Anna Kashfi have begun, and the ongoing custody battle for his son Christian is psychologically draining Brando. Paparazzi every day, studio meetings every night, new film offers every morning. Brando is drowning, but the real blow comes in 1962. His mother Dorothy Brando loses her life after years of alcoholism. The already broken bonds in Brando's relationship with his family completely vanish. This death has such an impact on Brando that his close friends say he was never the same again. Something broke, irreparably broke. But right in this dark period, a light enters Brando's life. In 1960, he travels to Tahiti for the filming of Mutiny on the Bounty. The film's script tells the famous mutiny that occurred on the HMS Bounty ship in the 18th century, and the filming takes place in the paradise-like islands of French Polynesia. Brando is enchanted the moment he sees Tahiti. Turquoise waters, endless sandy beaches, palm trees, and most importantly, peace. A world completely detached from Hollywood's chaos, fake smiles, and constant public scrutiny. But Tahiti offers Brando more than just a landscape. There he meets Tarita Teripaya. The 19-year-old Tahitian actress plays a small role in the film, but for Brando, this encounter changes everything. Tarita is calm, natural, a woman far from Hollywood's artificiality. Brando falls in love with her, and this love strengthens his connection to Tahiti even more. When the filming ends, Brando returns to America, but his mind is still in Tahiti. He sees those islands in his dreams at night, and when he wakes up in the morning, Los Angeles's gray sky suffocates him. In 1966, he makes a decision. He will buy Tetiaroa Island. Tetiaroa is an atoll consisting of 12 small islets, located 53 kilometers north of Tahiti. White sandy beaches, crystal clear waters, and most importantly, completely deserted. Brando begins negotiations with the Tahitian government to purchase the island. The French Polynesian administration is initially hesitant because Tetiaroa is a sacred place for the local people. But Brando is persuasive. The island won't just be for himself, it will be used for environmental conservation projects. He will create an ecological paradise. The administration is finally convinced, and in 1967, Brando becomes the owner of Tetiaroa. When the press hears this news, they go crazy. The world's most famous actor has bought an island, but nobody knows the real reason. Brando isn't just buying a vacation home, he's implementing his escape plan. Brando's relationship with Hollywood is completely strained. The studios see him as difficult, uncontrollable, unprofessional. Brando sees them as frauds, money-hungry, art killers. 2 film projects fail one after another, and Brando's career is in danger. But to him, this doesn't matter at all, because now he has a plan. He will move to Tetiaroa, marry Tarita, completely break away from Hollywood. And in the early 1970s, he does exactly that. Brando starts spending most of his time in Tetiaroa. He marries Tarita. They have 2 children, Cheyenne and Tehotu. The press interprets Brando's move as an escape from Hollywood, but the truth is more complex. Brando isn't just escaping, he's trying to rebuild himself. Tetiaroa is a laboratory, a therapy center, a sanctuary for him. But is the island really a paradise? Maybe in the first years. Brando has a small bungalow built on the island. Electricity and water systems are installed. His days are simple, swimming in the sea in the morning, reading books under palm trees in the afternoon, spending time with Tarita and the children in the evening. Press photographs show Brando tanned, calm, happy. But behind these images lies a completely different reality. Brando is lonely in Tetiaroa. Very lonely. The island is small. There is zero social life. The nearest neighbor is kilometers away. Initially, Brando thinks this has a therapeutic effect, but over time, this loneliness begins to weigh on him. The chaos and adrenaline of Hollywood years have been replaced by silence, And this silence forces Brando to think. Past mistakes, lost people, disappointments. Tetiaroa started as an escape place, but slowly transforms into a place of confrontation. But Brando's children issue isn't limited to just Cheyenne and Tehotu. It's known that Marlon Brando had a total of 11 children, some from official marriages, some from relationships, and some from secrets that emerged years later. And Tetiaroa played different roles in these children's lives. For some, a paradise vacation, for others a nightmare, and for some, a place that never existed. There is nothing as complex, inconsistent, and destructive as Brando's understanding of fatherhood. And this inconsistency revealed itself in all its nakedness in Tetiaroa. His first child, Christian, was born in 1958 from his marriage to Anna Kashfi. Christian's childhood was spent in courtrooms because Brando and Kashfi were constantly in custody battles. Christian sometimes stayed with his mother, sometimes with his father, but he never truly felt he belonged anywhere. Brando occasionally took Christian to Tetiaroa, but these trips were traumatic for the child. Tarita was on the island, there were new siblings, and Christian felt like a stranger. Brando didn't show him the affection he showed to his other children. Christian constantly felt excluded, unwanted, second class. Years later, Christian said in interviews that his father was cold toward him, that he never felt at home in Tetiaroa. To him, the island was a fake paradise, an illusion of fake happiness in a fake family. Mainiti, Brando's daughter born in 1977, from his relationship with Tarita's cousin. Yes, while Brando was married to Tarita, he also got involved with her cousin. This scandal created a huge shock in Tahiti, because in local culture, this was a great disrespect. When Tarita learned of this betrayal, she completely broke away from Brando. But Mainiti was born, and Brando acknowledged her. Mainiti's childhood was spent in Tahiti, but she never lived in Tetiaroa. Brando provided her with financial support, but wasn't there emotionally. As an adult, Mainiti told how her father was a stranger to her, that they met only a few times, and even those meetings were formal and distant. To her, Tetiaroa was just a place she saw in photographs, her father's fantasy but never her home. Then there were 2 children from his marriage to Movita Castaneda, Miko and Rebecca. This marriage was also short-lived, and the children grew up with their mother in Los Angeles. Brando saw them occasionally but again wasn't a consistent father figure. Miko was closer to Brando, worked as his assistant, and was by his side in his father's final years. But even Miko describes his father's Tetiaroa period as dark. He went to the island a few times, but saw that his father was unhappy there. Brando acted as if he was talking to ghosts in Tetiaroa. Miko thinks his father saw the island not as an escape place but as a place of exile. Rebecca, on the other hand, hardly ever saw her father, never went to Tetiaroa, and remained distant from her father even as an adult. To her, Brando was a stranger. The 2 children from Tarita, Cheyenne and Tehotu, were the children most affected by Tetiaroa. Because they grew up on the island, it was their home. Cheyenne was born in 1970, Tehotu in 1963. Both grew up with Tahitian culture, spoke Tahitian, roamed freely on the island. Maybe they were happy in the first years, but Brando's absence was always felt. Brando often went to America, didn't return for months. Cheyenne was especially affected by this absence. As a little girl, she missed her father, but Brando wasn't there. When Brando returned, he was someone different, tense, irritable, distant. Cheyenne tried to gain approval from her father, but couldn't. This sense of rejection formed the basis of Cheyenne's psychological problems. Tehotu was a calmer child. His relationship with Brando was less intense. Perhaps that's why it was less destructive. As an adult, Tehotu lived in Tahiti, focused on his music career, and tried to stay away from his father's legacy. But even he acknowledges the effect Tetiaroa had on his family. The island was a dream, but also a prison. Brando had gone there to find peace, but had destroyed his family there. Brando has other children too, some officially recognized, some emerged years later. Petra Brando Fischer, born in 1972 from a relationship with a German nurse. Brando never acknowledged her, even denied her existence. As an adult, Petra proved through DNA testing that her father was Brando, but by then Brando was dead. Petra never saw Tetiaroa, never met her father. To her, Brando was just a name, a biological connection, but emotionally nothing. Raiatua Brando, born in 1982 from a relationship with Tarita's friend. This also created a scandal in Tahiti because Brando was again involved with someone from Tarita's circle. Raiatua also grew up in Tahiti, but didn't live in Tetiaroa. Brando visited her occasionally, but again wasn't a consistent father. As an adult, Raiatua said her father was indifferent toward her, only provided financial support, but was never there emotionally. Nina Priscilla Brando, born in 1989, from a relationship with a Guatemalan housekeeper. Brando kept this relationship secret too, but acknowledged her after Nina was born. Nina grew up with her mother in Los Angeles, rarely saw Brando. To her, Tetiaroa was just a legend, a mysterious place where her father lived with ghosts. As an adult, Nina acknowledges her father's complex personality, but also has anger toward him. To her, Brando was a coward, a man who ran from his family, ran from his responsibilities. Stefano Brando and Angelo Brando, born from a relationship with a Mexican woman who worked at Brando's house in Los Angeles. These children also emerged years later. Brando acknowledged them but again had a limited relationship. Stefano and Angelo barely remember their father because Brando spent very little time with them. Tetiaroa was a place that never existed for them. There is one common point in all these children's stories: Brando's absence. Even when Brando was physically there, he was never there emotionally. He couldn't bond with his children, couldn't give them the affection they needed. And Tetiaroa became the symbol of this failure. Brando had dreamed of the island as a family home, but in reality, it became a breaking point. His children experienced the island in different ways. Some strangers who never went, some guests who visited occasionally, some people who grew up there but were destroyed. None of them saw Tetiaroa as a real home, because Brando never became a real father there. Cheyenne's tragedy was the climax of this family's collapse. Cheyenne grew up in Tetiaroa, lived her father's dream, but was also the child who felt her father's absence the most. Her psychological problems began in adolescence: depression, anxiety, identity crisis. Brando didn't notice or didn't want to notice. In 1989, Cheyenne had a car accident and her face was seriously damaged. This incident made her already fragile mental state even worse. She felt ugly, worthless. Brando spent money on surgeries but didn't provide emotional support. Cheyenne wanted love from her father, but Brando couldn't give it, because Brando himself was deprived of love. In 1990, Cheyenne was staying at Brando's house in Los Angeles with her boyfriend Dag Drolet. Cheyenne was pregnant, and her relationship was troubled. She claimed Dag was violent toward her. One night, Cheyenne told her brother Christian that Dag was beating her. Christian grabbed a gun and shot Dag. Dag died at the scene. The trial process began, and the media went crazy. Brando testified in court crying, defending his son. He said Christian was trying to protect his sister, but the truth was more complex. Cheyenne's statements were inconsistent. Her psychological state was bad. Some thought Cheyenne manipulated her brother, had him killed because she was angry at Dag. Nobody knows the truth. But one thing is certain: the Brando family had collapsed. Christian received a 6-year prison sentence. Cheyenne returned to Tahiti, gave birth to her baby, named him Tuki. But Cheyenne's psychological state worsened. She couldn't take care of her baby, didn't speak for days, attempted suicide. Brando tried to get her treatment, but Cheyenne was too far gone. In 1995, at age 25, Cheyenne hanged herself at her mother's house in Tahiti. She left no suicide note, only silence. Brando was completely destroyed after this event. He blamed himself for his daughter's death. If he had been a better father, if he had been there, if he hadn't neglected her in that loneliness in Tetiaroa, maybe Cheyenne would have lived. The guilt became unbearable. Brando began struggling with obesity, tried to suppress his pain by eating. His weight exceeded 140 kilograms. He stopped leaving his house. He stopped going to Tetiaroa. The island was no longer just a failed investment. It was an accomplice to his daughter's death. Every time he remembered, he saw Cheyenne, the little girl running on those beaches, the young woman waiting for her father's approval, the destroyed person who finally gave up on everything. Teharu completely severed his relationship with his father after his sister's death. He didn't forgive Brando. He thought his father had a share in Cheyenne's death. They didn't speak for years. Teharu stayed in Tahiti, focused on music, almost never used the Brando surname. To him, the Brando family was cursed, and he wanted to stay away from that curse. Christian couldn't get his life together after getting out of prison. He sank into alcohol and drugs. His relationship with his father was complex. Brando had defended him in court, but had never been there emotionally. Christian died in 2008, at age 49, from pneumonia. But the real cause was alcohol destroying his liver and lungs. Brando didn't see this death because he himself had died in 2004. But Christian's final years were crushed under the weight of his father's legacy. Brando's other children watched Cheyenne and Christian's tragedy from afar. Some severed their relationship with their father. Some remained distant. Some tried to forgive. Miko was the only child by his father's side in his final years. He took care of Brando's health problems, spent time with him. But even Miko says his father's Tetiaroa period was a mistake. The island didn't heal Brando, it just postponed his problems and eventually made everything worse. He wins an Oscar for The Godfather, but doesn't attend the ceremony. Instead, he sends Native American activist Sachin Littlefeather and protests Hollywood. This action is a reflection of Brando's Tetiaroa period. He's no longer playing by Hollywood's rules. He's setting his own rules. But this rebellion has a price. The studios start completely excluding Brando. Film offers decrease. His income drops. And Tetiaroa's maintenance costs are very high. The island is not an investment. It's a hole that constantly consumes money. Brando constantly spends money on electricity generators, water purification systems, buildings. But there's no income. The island is closed to tourists. There's no commercial use. Brando is after an idealistic project, but economic realities are hitting him. And then strange events begin.
Around 1974, local workers working in Tetiaroa start complaining about Brando's behavior. Brando wanders alone on the island at night, talks to himself, sometimes stares at the sea for hours. One worker claims Brando shouted on the beach at midnight, saying incomprehensible things. Another says he heard strange sounds in Brando's bungalow. Of course, these accounts may be exaggerated, but one truth exists. Brando is experiencing a psychological crisis in Tetiaroa. The island's loneliness isn't healing him. On the contrary, it's leaving him alone with his traumas. His relationship with his mother, his failed marriages, Hollywood's pressure, his distance from his children. They all echo in Tetiaroa's silence. Tahiti, meanwhile, is suffering from this situation. Her marriage to Brando is becoming increasingly tense. Brando often goes to Los Angeles, continues to act in films because he needs money. But when he returns to Tetiaroa, he becomes a different person. Irritable, introverted, uncommunicative. Tahiti tells local friends that Brando sometimes shows violent tendencies. Not physical violence, but psychological pressure. Brando is controlling, strict, sharp-tempered. In this small kingdom established in Tetiaroa, Brando wants to be the sole ruler. But this control effort destroys everything. Tahiti divorces Brando in 1972. Brando's Tahitian dream is collapsing. In the mid-1980s, Brando decides to turn Tetiaroa into a commercial project. As the need for money increases, idealistic ideas are set aside. The island will be turned into a hotel, luxury bungalows, tourists, income. Brando meets with investors, plans are made, but the project is constantly postponed. Bureaucratic obstacles, financial problems, Brando's indecisions. Tetiaroa remains as an unfinished project for years. Brando can't get back the millions he invested in the island. The island turns into a money pit, and Brando's anger about this increases every passing year. The Tahitian dream has become a nightmare. In his final years, Brando struggles with obesity, doesn't leave his house, is depressed. He doesn't talk about Tetiaroa in interviews, as if that period never happened. But in 2004, shortly before his death, he shows the island to a documentary crew. In front of the camera, Brando is tired, exhausted, regretful. "This was supposed to be paradise," he says, "but I brought hell here." When the crew films the island, they see the ruined buildings, broken docks, piles of garbage. Tetiaroa is a ghost's house, a monument to what Brando lost. Brando dies in 2004. In his will, he leaves Tetiaroa to his children, but a battle starts among his children for the island. Some want to sell the island, some want to protect it, some don't care at all. Court cases go on for years. Finally, in 2014, a luxury hotel named the Brando opens. Millions of dollars of investment, ecological design, famous guests. Brando's dream comes true 50 years later. But he doesn't see it. And maybe he wouldn't want to. Because Tetiaroa was never a hotel project for him. It was an escape, a search, a hope for salvation. But in the end, it was just an illusion. Today, Tetiaroa Island is dazzlingly beautiful. Tourists honeymoon there, take Instagram photos, have a paradise vacation. But none of them know what Brando experienced there. Walking on those beaches, they don't think about his loneliness. Staying in those bungalows at night, they don't think about his despair. Looking at that water, they don't think about what he lost. Tetiaroa is now a brand, a luxury destination. But it was once the stage of a man's destruction, the background of a family's tragedy. What do Brando's Tahitian years teach us? Perhaps that escape is not a solution. You can escape from Hollywood, from fame, from chaos, but you can't escape from yourself. Brando discovered his own inner hell while searching for peace in Tetiaroa. Unresolved issues with his mother, fatherhood inadequacies, control obsession, fear of loneliness. None of them stayed on the island. They all came with him. And perhaps that's why Tetiaroa didn't heal him. Because the island wasn't a treatment, it was a mirror. When Brando looked in the mirror, he saw what he didn't like, himself. Cinema history's greatest actor, at the peak of his career, abandoned everything and went to an island. The story could end here, a romantic escape, a brave move. But real life doesn't work that way. Brando's Tahitian years brought him neither fame nor peace nor happiness. On the contrary, it was one of the most painful periods of his life. He lost a daughter, a son went to prison, his marriage ended, his fortune eroded, his health deteriorated. Tetiaroa's bill was heavy. But maybe Brando couldn't have been any other way. Maybe a genius of that intensity, that much trauma, that much loneliness, couldn't find a happy ending. Today, when Marlon Brando is mentioned, The Godfather, on the waterfront, Apocalypse Now come to mind. But Tetiaroa is not remembered. That story remains in the shadows. Yet Brando's real tragedy happened there, on that island. A drama as real, as painful as the roles he played in Hollywood. Without a camera, without an audience, without applause. Just a man, an island, and inevitable truths. Tetiaroa is still there today, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in dazzling beauty. But in that island's soul are Marlon Brando's echoes. Perhaps at night, after the tourists have fallen asleep, when the wind passes through the remains of those old bungalows, Brando's screams can still be heard. Perhaps on those beaches, when the waves hit the shore, his footprints are still being searched for. Perhaps Tetiaroa is not just an island, it's a warning. A warning of what we think we can escape from, but never can, ourselves. Marlon Brando's lost years are no longer lost. We know what happened. We know what he lost. And perhaps this knowledge teaches us something. Fame, money, beauty, an island, none of them save us. Salvation is inside, in our own reckonings, in our own forgiveness, in our own peace. Brando couldn't learn this, or learned it too late. Tetiaroa was a lesson for him, but the lesson came heavy, too heavy. Today, while telling this story, we've told not just an actor's past, but an aspect of human nature. We all sometimes want to escape, from problems, from pressure, from expectations. Brando escaped, and what did he find? More pain, more loss. Perhaps the bravest action is not to escape, but to stay and confront. But for Brando, it was too late. Even if Tetiaroa wasn't his grave, it became the place where his soul was buried. And perhaps that's why Marlon Brando is not just an actor. He's a symbol of the age we live in, a symbol of ourselves that we try to escape from, but never can. Tetiaroa reminds us of this, every day, every night, every wave, every wind, and we won't forget, because some stories are written not just in cinema history, but in human history. Brando's Tahitian years are such a story.